God, I hate following those two. That is hard. One of the things that, as Jefferson talked about, that I do is basically all things physical. All of the physical assets of the university, all the buildings, the real estate. We talk about over 800 buildings. We talk about 7 campuses, all of our health education centers, thousands of acres. And what is the challenge of that job? Well, when I first started in this role, I had the opportunity to meet with the trustees as that was happening privately. And the trustees gave me a 5-word job description. One of those trustees in the room, who I think actually expressed this rather directly, said, you have a 5-word job description. Don't screw up the campuses. And so I have, since that time, forgotten about everything else, and I have focused on those 5 words. And how we do that is about visioning. It's about looking as far into the future as you can see and try to predict for IU how we need to develop over time. But part of it is also trying to maintain what we have. That visioning process happens in my world by way of master plans. And we have master plans for each of our campuses. We have sub-master plans. And we live by those plans. And IU has been very fortunate over its lifetime of having master plans for its campuses and being very disciplined in how we develop over time. I say this often, one of the best things about working for Michael McRobbie, President McRobbie, is that there is no flavor of the day. I know from the day I started what my job is every day. I know what we're working on. I know the master plans we're working on. I know how his academic vision fits within those master plans. There is never a time, never has been a time, where he has a conversation with me today, calls me first thing tomorrow morning and says, forget about that, we're doing this. Never happens. So it allows us to have some focus. So as we do those plans, looking out into the future, what are the important elements? 3 things. First one is tradition. IU is absolutely blessed to have the tradition that it has people who feel so passionately about this university, evidenced by everybody who's in this room, who have been with it over time, whose parents were here over time, whose grandchildren will be here. And that tradition carries us in a way. One of the things we talk about in all of our campuses is that people fall in love with these campuses. Whether it be here in Bloomington, and certainly it has the age and the tradition, this campus is absolutely gorgeous. One of the best in the world. But all of our campuses, people fall in love with those places. Sometimes they fall in love, period. Think of how many people in this room, met their spouse or their life partner on one of our campuses. And they all have, see? And they all have special spaces that they remember fondly. Every once in a while I talk about Ballantyne Hall on this campus and we ought to tear it down. And inevitably, someone raises their hand and says, no, you can't tear it down. I met my wife in freshman English there. That's the example of tradition, and people feel very, very tightly bound to our campuses. They feel, as they choose a campus, we want to think that students, and I have a 17-year-old who's just gone through this process, that we want to think that they choose campuses based on faculty and academic programs and academic reputation and all those things. Yeah, they do. But how it looks and how it feels is as important to them and their parents as anything else. I use sometimes a business term. The way our campuses look is our brand. And we take very seriously maintaining that brand. We want that when you come back, just like you have this weekend, to here or any of our campuses, that when you come back, you have a timeless feel. We want you to think back that it is the same as it was 30 years ago. Just move forward. I had an alum yesterday. I was at the foundation board meeting, and he said to me that he had been recently back to Bloomington and he says, I can't ever, maybe I'm getting too old. He says, I can't figure out what's new and what was there when I was there, but it all has the same feel. I love it. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what we want. We want these places to have that timeless feel. That tradition works in our favor. And that's what makes, if you think of us as a company, that's what makes us different. That's what makes higher education different. We boast that timeless tradition. We value it. Other companies think about being in a place for 10 years, shutting down, moving someplace else. That'll never happen to us. And all of our campuses do have that feel in different ways. Second thing that we value in that visioning process is the delivery of need in education and research to our students. What we do with the physical spaces on all of our campuses has to support the educational and research mission of our students. And we have to reflect what they need today. One of the things we say is in our business is that we want, when a faculty member or a student or a researcher or a student athlete comes into a space where they are going to practice their craft or their education or any part of it, we want them to never have to think about the space, and we want it to be the best that we can possibly give them. We want that when they walk into a space, if that classroom, it's warm when it's supposed to be warm, it's cold when it's supposed to be cold, the plumbing works, the electricity works, the technology works, and they never have to think about those things. Do we get it right 100% of the time? No. But we're gonna die trying. And we want that same thing in our athletic venues. We want those student athletes to have the best that they can possibly have so that it never is a factor in their life. We want the same thing in research labs. We want our scientists being able to find ways to cure cancer. We don't want them worried about whether the lab is good enough. So we have to look at those needs. And third, this is the look out into the future part. We want to look out into the future and try to predict as best we can. But remembering, as I said in that tradition, we want to maintain our campuses. 60%, almost 2/3 of our buildings are over the age of 40. So our biggest challenge is maintaining what we have. Higher education in general does a really poor job of tearing buildings down. That's for good reason. We maintain what we have. So we need to do that. That's probably our biggest challenge looking forward. But then what are the spaces that we're going to need in the future? What are the types of things that students need in the future that they don't need today? Technology plays a big role in that. One of the things that students tell us they need, I've seen evolutions of classrooms over time. Classrooms, used to be for lots of us just tablet armchairs, and now the furniture is completely different and the learning styles are completely different. Students want more small group spaces to work in small groups on projects and things like that. That tells us something. That tells us that as we build new buildings, in our master plan, we know where they're going to go, that the outside of those buildings is going to be of IU, no matter what the campus. It's going to be of the culture and the architecture of that campus. The inside, we're going to make as flexible as we possibly can, because we know we're going to change. One of the things we know about lab spaces, used to be with laboratory spaces, you changed them about every 20, 25 years because the plumbing changed, or you just had to, things wore out. Now we're changing lab spaces every 4 to 7 years because the technology changes. We have to make things as flexible as we possibly can. We also know that on our campuses that we're going to have to address, as Nasser talked about, whether there's another wave of students coming to us, but they may come to us differently. This campus, we think the traditional residential Big Ten college campus, the wave of the future, this one stays generally the same. All of our other campuses, the wave is a little different. There may be more students wanting residential experiences. Maybe not. Maybe online education has a bigger impact on those campuses. And that's one of the things that we have to look at over time. We're very purposeful in what we do, but again, looking as far out into the future as we possibly can. That's what our master plans do. If I were doing a longer session with you, I would take you through all of IU's master plans over time and how successful we have been over time with those master plans and some of the mistakes we've made, Valentine. But we want to maintain those traditions, and what you can help us with as active as you are, and we certainly appreciate that. always give us that feedback. I love being in settings like this where somebody says, this looks great, that looks great, because I pass those messages back to all those people who do the work. I was walking over here from Bryan Hall, and I saw them working on the flowers around the sample gates. Those people work really hard at that. And we love those comments, but I also want the comments and the feedback when we fall down. I want to know when you think architecture doesn't quite make it, or we're not doing something right. That's what we need, because you are that tradition that I talked about. You know, in closing, I'll say too is that tradition means so much. In our next speaker, I love working with Fred Glass, and we're working together on several athletic projects, but the renovation of Assembly Hall. That is a perfect example of that tradition. That is a perfect example of that means so much to generations of Hoosiers in IU basketball. And as Fred says, that creates the best home court advantage of anybody in the country. Is it an ideal space? Is it comfortable? No, at times. But our job in the renovation is to bring that up to speed, but maintain that IU tradition. And I'll give you the last example. My wife and I went to graduate school at the University of Maryland in College Park, now a Big Ten member. And when my wife and I were dating, we used to go to basketball games at Cole Fieldhouse in College Park and watch Maryland play North Carolina. We watched Michael Jordan and all the great Duke teams and all that kind of thing. It was a great environment. It was uncomfortable. It was hot. But it was really noisy, and we had a great home court advantage. And then, probably about a decade ago, Maryland moved out of Cole Fieldhouse and built themselves a brand new, spanking new, shiny arena. And I bet, in talking to some of our friends who are alums of that institution, they regret that Cole Fieldhouse is not still around. Because that brand new arena is very nice, very comfortable, but it doesn't speak of that tradition. I'm glad we hold our traditions at IU. So thank you very much.